The winter wind cut across the narrow alleyways like invisible knives, carrying the smell of stale bread and damp earth. On the edge of a bustling restaurant in the heart of Lahore, a thin boy, no older than 11, stood barefoot on the cold stone pavement. His name was Ayan, and his eyes, large, dark, and filled with something far heavier than hunger, followed every plate that left the kitchen doors. He was small for his age, his clothes were torn at the sleeves, and a thin scarf was wrapped around his neck, more a habit than protection. There was a quiet dignity in him, a kind of patience one does not expect in children. Tonight, though, patience was losing its grip. The restaurant's door swung open, spilling warm light onto the street. Laughter poured out with it, rich men and their families celebrating some occasion. The aroma of spicy biryani and roasted meat clung to the air, making his empty stomach twist. The boy clenched his fists. Should he knock and beg for the scraps? Should he risk the humiliation, the angry shouts of the guards who always chased him away? His pride whispered no, but the ache in his belly screamed louder. One step forward, then he froze. His lips trembled as he looked at the basket of leftovers the waiter carried toward the trash bin. If I take it, they will call me a thief. If I don't, I might not eat tonight. But what if they see me? What if they ask who my father is again? He hated that question. It always made the room fall silent. And then, the question that had haunted him every night returned like a cold echo: where is my father? Why does no one know? Why does Amma cry when I ask? He took a deep breath, and in that frozen moment, the decision stood like a gate: beg or walk away? Hide or step forward? Lose his pride, or lose another night of hunger? What will Ayan choose? Will this simple act of hunger lead him to the truth his mother has been hiding? And who is the mysterious man everyone whispers about, the man they say disappeared the night Ayan was born? The sunlight streamed through the dusty curtains of a small one-room home on Ravi Road the next morning, painting soft golden lines across the cracked cement floor. The city was already awake, the sound of hawkers calling, rickshaws honking, and the smell of frying parathas filling the streets. Inside, Shabnam, Ayan's mother, sat cross-legged on a thin mat, rolling dough with trembling hands. Her face was pale, lined with years that hardship had drawn too quickly, and her long black hair was tied into a careless braid. The steam from the kettle fogged the tiny window as she hummed a song under her breath, an old lullaby she had once sung to Ayan when he was a baby. Ayan walked in quietly, still holding the piece of bread he had managed to snatch from the restaurant's garbage. He tried to hide it behind his back, but his mother's eyes caught everything. "Where were you all night, Beta?" Her voice was soft, yet it carried an edge that made his throat tighten. I was near the bazaar. They threw food away. I didn't steal, Amma, His voice cracked. Her hands stopped rolling. She looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. "You don't have to explain hunger to me, Ayan. But you must not beg. We are not beggars." Ayan stared at the bread. "Then what are we, Amma? People laugh at me because I don't know who my father is. They ask me every day, and I have no answer. If he is alive, why is he not here? If he is dead, why don't you tell me?" Her fingers tightened around the rolling pin. A shadow passed over her face. "There are things you are too young to know." He stepped closer, anger rising in his small chest. "I'm not too young to starve." The room fell silent. Outside, a rooster crowed, and the city went on as if nothing had happened. Later that day, Ayan walked along the busy Anarkali Market Street. People brushed past him, their hands full of shopping bags, their laughter ringing in the air. He carried a small cloth bag in which his mother had put a few boiled eggs and some bread to sell for extra money. "Don't come home without trying," she had said. But his mind was far from selling food. His eyes kept drifting to the large posters on the wall, faces of rich men, politicians, and business tycoons. One face, half torn by rain, made his heart stop. The man had sharp features, a thin scar under his eye, and a look of fierce determination. The caption read, "Missing for 11 years, last seen near Lahore railway station." Ayan felt his throat go dry. The man's eyes, they looked like his. He reached out and touched the paper, his fingers trembling. Behind him, a deep voice spoke, Why are you staring at that poster, boy? Ayan spun around to see an old rickshaw driver, his white beard streaked with gray. Do you know this man, Chacha? Ayan asked. The old man narrowed his eyes. Know him? Everyone knew him once. They said he was brave. They said he crossed the wrong people. Some say he's dead, some say he ran away. Why? Do you know him? Ayan shook his head too quickly. No. I was just looking. But the man kept staring at him, as if reading something in his face. Strange. You have his eyes. Ayan felt his heart pound so loud it drowned the market noise. Was this just a coincidence? Or had he stumbled upon the first thread of a truth his mother refused to share? That evening, he returned home to find his mother sitting on the floor, her face hidden in her hands. A letter lay beside her, its edges torn, the handwriting smudged. She quickly tried to hide it as he entered. What is that? Ayan asked. Nothing. Just a bill. You're lying, Amma. Her eyes flashed with warning. Go wash your hands. We will eat. But that night, long after she fell asleep, Ayan crept to her side and slowly pulled the letter from beneath her pillow. The words were faint, almost faded by time, but one sentence stood out. He must never know the truth. For his safety and ours. His heart raced. Who was he? Him? His father? And why would the truth put them in danger? As the cold wind howled outside their little home, Ayan sat awake, the letter trembling in his hands. For the first time, he felt that his hunger was not only for food, but for answers. The cold air of the next morning crept into the small room as Ayan woke with the letter still clutched in his hand. His eyes burned from lack of sleep, but his mind refused to rest. The words in that letter echoed over and over until they became louder than the hunger in his stomach. He slipped the paper back under his mother's pillow before she could notice. When Shabnam stirred and rose to make tea, he pretended to sleep, his breathing slow, his back turned to her. But inside his heart was pounding with a new kind of ache, curiosity mixed with fear. The day unfolded like any other. The city roared outside with rickshaws rattling past, schoolchildren in clean uniforms rushing by, men shouting prices in the market. Ayan sat by the door, a half-eaten piece of bread in his hand, staring at the busy world that never noticed boys like him. His mother gave him a basket of boiled eggs to sell again. Her eyes lingered on him for a moment, as if she knew something had shifted in him. Be careful today, Beta. Stay away from the big streets, she said softly. He nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He walked through the market, his bare feet brushing against dust and stones, his eyes scanning every poster, every wall, every stranger's face. He found himself stopping again at the torn poster of the missing man. The rain had smudged it even more, but the scar under the man's eye was still visible. Ayan touched his own cheek unconsciously as if trying to feel the same mark. A shopkeeper shouted at him to move away from the wall, and he quickly stepped aside, clutching his basket tighter. Later that day he sat near the railway station, where the old rickshaw driver had said the man was last seen. The place was alive with noise, trains screaming on the tracks, porters shouting, the smell of oil and iron thick in the air. He watched people come and go, travelers with heavy bags, women holding children close, men in uniforms. And among them, a stranger caught his eye. A tall man in a dark coat stood by the tea stall, staring at Ayan too long, his eyes sharp like a hawk's. When their gazes met, the man quickly turned away and blended into the crowd. Ayan felt a chill run down his spine. Was it just his imagination, or had someone been watching him? As evening approached, he returned home with most of the eggs unsold. His mother did not scold him this time, instead she looked more tired than usual, her hands trembling as she poured tea. He wanted to ask her about the man in the poster, about the letter, about the stranger at the station, but something in her face stopped him. There was fear there, and also sorrow. That night, as the city lights flickered in the distance, a knock echoed on their wooden door. 3 short knocks, then silence. Shabnam froze where she sat. Her face drained of color. Ayan, go to the back room, she whispered. But he didn't move. The knock came again, louder this time. She hurried to the door and opened it just a crack. A shadowed figure stood outside, his voice low. "Is the boy here?" Ian strained to hear, his heart thudding like a drum. Who was this man? How did he know about him? His mother stepped outside quickly, closing the door behind her, but the thin walls could not hide their murmurs. "You promised he would never be involved," she hissed. The man's reply was lost in the street noise, but one word pierced through the cold air: "They found out." When she came back inside, her hands were shaking. "Pack your things," she said. "We may have to leave tonight." Ian stared at her, his voice barely a whisper. "Amma, is it about my father?" She looked at him, eyes full of something between love and terror. "Do not ask that now." But it was too late. The question had already opened a door that could not be closed. That night, as the city slept, Ian lay awake again, listening to the faint footsteps outside their house, the whisper of the cold wind through the cracks. Somewhere in the darkness, someone was watching. Somewhere, a secret was coming closer, step by step. The night dragged on with a weight that pressed against the walls of their small home. Ian could hear his mother shifting restlessly in the other room, her footsteps soft against the cold cement floor. He lay on the thin mat, eyes wide open, staring at the shadowy ceiling. The words "they found out" kept echoing in his mind like a warning drumbeat. Every sound outside, a dog's distant bark, a rickshaw rolling by, the whisper of the wind, felt like a signal that something was about to happen. He clenched his fists under the blanket. He was tired of being kept in the dark. By dawn, his decision was made. If his mother would not tell him the truth, he would find it himself. The morning broke with a thin fog rolling over the streets. Vendors shouted in half-sleepy voices as they arranged their stalls. Ian carried the basket of eggs again, but this time he walked with purpose, not to sell but to listen, to watch, to follow. His eyes searched the crowd for the tall man in the dark coat. Hours passed, his feet ached, his stomach growled, but his focus did not waver. Near the tea stall by the railway station, he saw him. The same man. He was speaking with two others now, their heads close, their faces serious. Ian hid behind a pillar, straining to hear. One of them said, "She will run. We have to find the boy before that." The tall man nodded. "Orders are clear. No mistakes this time." A chill swept through Ian. "They are looking for me." "But why? Who are they?" His heart pounded as the men began to move. He followed at a distance, weaving through the crowd like a shadow, careful not to be seen. They turned down a narrow lane that led away from the market, towards the old warehouses near the river. The lane smelled of rust and damp earth. Ian crept closer, hiding behind stacked crates. The men stopped at a metal door, knocked twice, and slipped inside. A faint light glowed from the cracks. Ian crouched low, his breath shallow. He could hear their voices faintly now. Words like search, documents, safe house, floated out. His fingers dug into the dirt. Safe house? Are they looking for my mother's house? He wanted to rush in, demand answers, but his body froze with fear. Suddenly a hand clamped down on his shoulder. He spun around, eyes wide, ready to run. It was the old rickshaw driver. His weathered face looked stern but not cruel. "Boy," he whispered, "do you have a death wish? Do you know who those men are?" Ian shook his head. "Tell me." The old man glanced at the door, then back at him. "They are not police, if that's what you think. They are from a group that makes people disappear. Your father, if he was the man on that poster, he crossed them once. If they know you're his blood, they will come for you." The words struck Ian like a slap. "So it's true? He is alive?" The old man's eyes softened. "Alive or dead, I cannot say. But you carry his face. That is enough." Before Ian could ask more, the door behind them creaked open. Light spilled out, and one of the men stepped into the alley, his eyes scanning the shadows. The rickshaw driver pushed Ian behind a stack of boxes and whispered, "Run when I tell you." The man's footsteps drew closer. His hand rested on something under his coat. The rickshaw driver stepped out to block his path, coughing loudly as if by accident. The man glared but moved on, muttering under his breath. The door shut again. Now, the old man hissed. Ian ran, his heart thundering, his breath ragged as he darted through the lanes until the market noises swallowed the sound of pursuit. When he finally stopped, his chest burned and his legs shook. The old rickshaw driver caught up, panting. You cannot go home, he said. They will follow you there. Ian stared at him, sweat dripping down his forehead. Then where do I go? I have nowhere else. The man placed a hand on his shoulder. There is a place. A friend of your father's. But you must decide now, do you trust me, or do you go back and risk everything? Ian's eyes darted between the road leading home and the road leading into the unknown. Behind him, the city roared like an uncaring beast. Ahead, the sun was sinking low, painting the sky red like a warning. Ian's heart pounded so hard it felt as if the whole market could hear it. The setting sun painted the sky a dark orange, shadows stretching like claws over the broken streets. The old rickshaw driver's hand was still on his shoulder, steady but heavy, like a door that could open or close his fate. His mother's warning voice echoed in his mind, stay away from the big streets, come home before dark. But her trembling hands, her sudden fear, the letter she hid, and the stranger at their door told him one thing, going home was no longer safe. I will come, Ian whispered. His voice was firm though his chest trembled. The old man nodded, relief softening his rough features. Good. We must leave now. The city doesn't sleep for long. They weaved through back alleys, avoiding the crowded main roads where eyes might follow. The air smelled of damp bricks and fried food from roadside stalls, the cries of vendors mixing with the honking of rickshaws. Ian clutched the empty basket, his fingers tight around its handle as if it was the last piece of his old life he could hold on to. Who is your friend? Ian finally asked as they walked. The rickshaw driver's eyes flicked around before he answered. Name's Yasir. He fought beside your father once. Not in a war, in something quieter, something the newspapers never dared write about. He's the only one I know who hasn't disappeared. Ian's steps faltered. Fought? Was my father, was he a criminal? Yasser stopped, his gaze heavy on the boy. There are men the world calls criminals because they stand against the wrong hands. There are men who vanish because they know too much truth. Your father, he was both brave and hunted. The words wrapped around Ian like smoke, unclear, dangerous, pulling him forward and backward at once. They reached a part of the city Ian had never seen. The houses were older here, their walls cracked, paint peeled, and gates locked with heavy chains. Yasser led him through a side passage, pushing open a rusted iron gate that groaned in protest. Beyond it was a courtyard choked with weeds, and at its center, an old workshop with shuttered windows. Yasser knocked 3 times, then waited. The door opened just a slit, a single wary eye peering through. Who? A voice asked. Tell him the river still runs red, Yasser said. The door opened wider, and a man with graying hair and a limp stepped aside. Bring him in. Quickly. Inside, the air smelled of old oil and paper. Maps were pinned to the walls, their edges curling. Stacks of boxes and old radios cluttered the floor. The man limped toward a table where a single lamp flickered weakly. This is the boy, he asked, studying Ian. This is him, Yasser replied. The man's eyes narrowed. He has his eyes. Ian clenched his fists. Whose eyes? Tell me now. Everyone keeps saying that. Is he alive? Is my father alive? The limping man sat down heavily. Alive? That depends on what you believe. They took him 11 years ago. Some say he was killed. Some say he escaped. If he's alive, he is running. Ian's throat tightened. Running from what? Before the man could answer, a sound split the air, a distant crack, like wood snapping. Yasser moved to the window, his body stiff. We were followed. The lamplight flickered. The workshop seemed to shrink around them. How many? The limping man whispered. Too many, Yasser replied. They want the boy.
Ian's breath came fast now.
The shadows outside thickened as footsteps approached the courtyard.
Doors slammed somewhere in the street. A dog barked and then went silent. The man with the limp handed Ian a small envelope. "Take this. Don't open it now. Not until you are far." "What is it?" Ian asked, his fingers trembling as they closed around the envelope.
"Your father's last message," the man said quietly. "He left it for you, in case they ever came." The door shuddered as something heavy struck it. Yasser turned to Ian, his voice sharp now, no longer gentle.
"Go through the back. Run. Do not stop. Do not look back.
And whatever you hear, do not return." Ian's feet hesitated at the threshold. His mind screamed to stay, to fight, to demand answers. But his heart knew if he stayed, there would be no tomorrow. He darted through the narrow passage behind the workshop, the envelope clutched against his chest, his breath misting in the cold night air. Behind him, the door splintered, voices roared, and a single shot rang out. The street ahead was empty, bathed in the pale light of a flickering street lamp. A crow flew off the wires, startled by the noise.
Ian didn't stop running.
The night was cold, the streets nearly empty, and Ian's breath came in sharp clouds as he ran through the twisting lanes. His heart hammered in his chest, his legs burned, but he did not slow. Behind him, faint echoes of shouting carried through the alleys, mixed with the dull thud of boots against stone. Every turn he took, every shadow he passed, felt like a pair of eyes watching him. The envelope in his hand was damp with sweat, its edges crumpled, the paper whispering secrets he was not ready to know. He turned into a narrow street where the lights flickered and the walls leaned inward like silent witnesses. A rusty gate stood half open ahead, leading to an old courtyard filled with abandoned carts and broken crates. He slipped inside, crouching behind a stack of wood, forcing himself to breathe slowly. His ears strained for any sound, footsteps, voices, anything that meant danger had followed.
Minutes passed.
Only the distant hum of the city remained.
His fingers tightened around the envelope. The words of the limping man rang in his head, "Don't open it now. Not until you are far." But how far was safe? Was anywhere safe now?
He tore the envelope open with shaking hands. Inside was a single folded paper and a photograph, yellowed with age. The photograph showed a man in a worn jacket, standing by a river, his arm around a young woman, his mother.
Ian's breath caught.
The man's eyes were sharp, the same shape as his own, the same scar under his right eye. He flipped the photograph over. Written in hurried script were the words, "If you read this, they know.
Trust no uniform.
Go to the place where the river bends.
The key is buried under the roots." The letter inside was even stranger. It was short, only a few lines. "Ian. If this reaches you, it means I failed to return. I never left you by choice.
I fought for a truth they wanted buried, and for that they hunted me.
Your mother tried to keep you safe.
Forgive her for the silence.
Find the river. Follow the key. Only then will you know who I am. F."
The paper trembled in his grip. His eyes darted to the name, only the letter F.
No full name. Just an initial.
His father had been here, had planned this, had known they would come. A sudden clatter in the alley snapped him back.
A metal can rolled across the stones.
He stuffed the photograph and letter into his shirt and pressed himself against the wall, his heart pounding like a drum. A shadow moved across the courtyard entrance.
Two figures stepped in, their coats long, their faces half hidden by the glow of a distant street lamp. One of them spoke into a small device. "Search every lane. The boy can't be far." Ian crouched lower, holding his breath. His mind raced. Trust no uniform.
These men moved like soldiers, but not the kind who served the people. He had to move before they swept the courtyard. When their footsteps turned the other way, he slipped out through a broken gate and into another lane. His bare feet were numb now, his breath ragged. He thought of his mother. Was she safe? Had they reached her already? The image of the door splintering, the shout, the gunshot, it all crashed into his chest like a wave. The road ahead sloped downward toward the river. The moonlight shimmered faintly on the water in the distance. He remembered the words, the place where the river bends. He knew that bend, it was where the old banyan tree grew, its roots thick like coiled snakes, where fishermen tied their boats. He had played there once, years ago, when life was simpler. He stumbled toward it, his legs heavy, his eyes stinging from the cold air. The streets here were quieter, lined with shuttered shops and dark windows. Only a stray dog lifted its head as he passed, its ribs sharp under its skin. At the riverbank, the world felt still. The water moved slowly, black under the fading moon. The banyan tree loomed tall, its roots sprawling into the earth like ancient fingers. Ian dropped to his knees and began to dig with his hands, the soil cold and damp. His fingers scraped against something hard, a small metal box, rusted but intact. He pulled it free just as distant voices echoed down the path. He clutched the box to his chest and ducked behind the tree. The voices drew nearer, flashlights cutting through the mist. One beam swept across the water, then lingered on the footprints he had left in the mud. "Here," a voice called. Ian's lungs burned as he held his breath. The box felt heavier than anything he had ever held, not just in weight, but in meaning. Inside it lay the truth his father had died for, or maybe still lived for. A twig snapped behind him. He spun around. A hand reached out from the darkness, not a soldier's hand, but thin, trembling, scarred. A whisper followed, low and urgent. "Come with me if you want to live." Ian's eyes widened. In the dim light, he could barely make out the face, rough beard, hollow cheeks, a faint scar under one eye. The night air clung to his skin like cold breath as Ian stared at the figure before him. The man's hand hovered in the darkness, open but tense, as if ready to pull him away or crush him in the same moment. The faint scar under his right eye glinted when the weak moonlight caught it, and that single mark sent a shiver through Ian's chest. The same scar. The same place. The photograph in his shirt burned against his heart like proof. But the man's face was older, his beard thick and unkempt, his eyes sharp yet hollow, like someone who had seen too many nights without sleep. "Who are you?" Ian whispered, his voice barely more than the sound of the river moving. The man's hand did not lower. "Not here. They're coming. Move now, or you will never know." The shouts behind them grew louder, flashlights slicing through the mist like spears. Ian's fingers tightened on the rusted box, his breath coming fast. He wanted to scream for answers, to demand the truth, but his legs chose before his mouth did. He reached out and grabbed the man's hand. The man pulled him swiftly along the riverbank, ducking low behind the wall of tangled roots. They slid into a narrow path that twisted between old warehouses and the water's edge. The smell of rusted metal and fish clung to the air. The man moved with purpose, never looking back, his grip firm but not cruel. They reached a hidden stairway that descended beneath an abandoned pier. A rusted door waited there, half buried in shadows. The man knocked 3 times in a strange rhythm, then pushed it open. The space inside was small and dark, lit only by a flickering lantern hanging from a hook. Maps, old radios, and torn documents littered a wooden table. The air smelled of damp earth and secrets. "Sit," the man said, finally releasing his grip. Ian did not sit. He stood, clutching the box, his chest rising and falling. "Who are you?" he asked again, louder this time. The man sighed, his shoulders sagging for the first time. "My name is Farid." The name cracked something inside Ian. "F," he whispered. "The letter, it was you." Farid's eyes softened, but the hardness never left his face completely. "I wanted to come for you years ago. But they were watching. They took everything from us. Your mother, she hid you well." Ian's throat felt dry. "Why did you leave? Why did everyone say you disappeared? Were you running away?" Farid shook his head slowly. "Running? No. Fighting. There are men in this city, men with uniforms, men with money, who steal children, silence voices, bury truths. I found something I should not have, and they wanted me gone. I thought if I vanished, they would leave you and your mother alone. The boy's hands trembled around the box.
And this? What is inside? Farid looked at the box as if it was a living thing. The key.
The reason they hunt us.
Inside is proof of what they did.
It can free many people, or destroy us if it falls in the wrong hands.
Ayan swallowed hard. Then why give it to me?
Because I have no one else left to trust, Farid said.
Yasser was supposed to keep you safe.
If they found him, they will not stop.
They will come for your mother next.
A cold wave washed over Ayan's chest.
Amma. I left her. Farid's jaw tightened. We can still reach her, but not now. Not while they are awake. We move at dawn.
Ayan finally sat on the wooden stool, the box in his lap, his mind spinning.
What do they want with me?
Farid stared at him for a long time.
Not just you. Your name. Your blood.
You are proof that I lived. If they erase you, the story ends. A sudden banging echoed above them, boots on the pier, voices calling orders.
Farid blew out the lantern. Darkness swallowed the room whole.
Quiet, he whispered. Through the cracks in the old boards, light flickered and shadows passed.
Ayan held his breath until his chest ached.
The box felt like a beating heart in his hands.
Minutes stretched like hours. Then, silence again. Farid relit the lantern, his face grim.
They are searching everywhere now.
We don't have much time. Ayan looked at him in the flickering glow. If you are really my father, then why didn't you come sooner? Why did you let me grow up not knowing? Farid's eyes glistened for the first time. Because every day I stayed away was a day you lived. I thought pain was better than a grave.
The boy lowered his gaze, his fingers brushing the rusted box.
What do we do now? Farid placed a hand on his shoulder, firm and steady.
Now, we open that box when we are far from here.
And then, we make a choice.
Outside, a horn wailed in the distance, followed by the faint sound of engines starting. Somewhere, someone had given an order.
Inside the small hideout, father and son sat in the half-light, their breaths uneven, their future balanced on a single night.
The first faint light of dawn crept over the rooftops, turning the river a pale gray. The city was still half asleep, tea sellers lighting their stoves, stray dogs slinking through alleys, the cold air carrying the scent of damp stone and smoke. Inside the hidden room beneath the pier, Ayan sat with the rusted box on his lap, his small fingers tracing its edges. His eyes were heavy, but sleep had not touched him. Every sound outside kept him awake, boots on distant cobblestones, the creak of old wood, the low rumble of an engine that seemed to pause and listen. Farid stood near the door, his hand on the old lock, his eyes sharp despite the long night. His beard was streaked with gray now that the lantern light revealed him fully. There was a strange calm in his movements, the kind that comes from years of being hunted. We move before the sun climbs, he said quietly. Once the city wakes, their net will tighten. Ayan hugged the box to his chest. Where are we going? To the old rail yard beyond the canal. There is a train that leaves for Multan before sunrise. We'll take that, then move by road. Ayan's heart thudded. And Amma? We can't leave her. Farid's jaw tightened. We will find her. But if they reach you first, they will use you to reach her. Understand this, Ayan, staying means death, leaving means a chance. The boy wanted to argue, to shout that his mother's tears meant more than secrets and keys, but the echo of last night's gunshots still rang in his ears. He nodded. Farid unbolted the door and peered out. The sky above was a smear of orange and gray now. Keep your head low. Follow me. They moved through the narrow streets, their footsteps light, their shadows long and thin against the cold ground. Ayan clutched the box under his shawl, his eyes darting at every corner. Farid walked fast, but not careless, his eyes scanned the rooftops, the alley mouths, the parked rickshaws that could be hiding watchers. The city was waking now, vendors shouting prices, bicycles clattering, a faint whistle of a distant train. They reached a crossroads where the fog thinned, and there, across the street, a black van idled. Its windows were dark. The air suddenly felt too still. Farid's hand shot out, pushing Ayan back into the shadow of a shuttered shop.
"Too quiet," he muttered. The van door slid open.
Two men stepped out, coats long, faces blank. One of them raised a small device to his mouth.
"We have them." Farid grabbed Ayan's hand and ran.
The street exploded with motion, men emerging from doorways, footsteps slamming against pavement, shouts slicing through the morning air. Ayan's breath tore through his throat as they darted between carts and stray dogs, past a tea stall where a kettle crashed to the ground. Farid pulled him into a narrow side lane, the van screeching as it turned to follow.
"Faster!"
Farid hissed, his voice hoarse. They crossed a small bridge over the canal, its wooden planks creaking under their weight. Ahead, the faint whistle of the train echoed again, a promise, a direction.
But behind them, the van's engine roared closer, its headlights cutting through the mist like blades. Ayan's foot slipped on the damp wood, the box almost tumbling from his grasp.
Farid caught him and shoved him forward.
"Don't let it go.
That box is your future." They reached the far side of the bridge, but the road beyond was blocked, two more figures stepping out, their silhouettes dark against the rising sun.
Farid glanced left, a narrow alley wound toward the rail yard, but a tall iron gate barred it. "Climb," he ordered.
Ayan scrambled up, his fingers clawing at the cold metal, his feet slipping against the rust. Farid followed, his movements quick despite the weight of the small bag slung across his shoulder. A shout rose behind them, then the sharp crack of something striking the gate. Splinters of rust flew. Ayan reached the top, swung his leg over, and dropped to the other side with a grunt. Farid landed beside him a moment later, his breath ragged but his eyes alive. They ran again, weaving through the narrow lane until the sound of the train grew louder, a heavy engine rumbling, its smoke curling into the sky.
"There!" Farid pointed to a low wall that separated them from the tracks.
Beyond it, a line of freight cars stood waiting, their doors open, workers shouting to each other as they loaded sacks and crates. They crouched behind the wall as the van screeched to a halt somewhere nearby.
Doors slammed. Boots hit the ground.
Farid turned to Ayan, his voice low but firm.
"We jump into the second car when it moves. Stay low. Do not look out." Ayan nodded, clutching the box.
The train hissed, metal groaning as it began to lurch forward. Farid boosted him up, his hands strong despite the tremble in his arms.
Ayan scrambled inside, pulling the box tight against his chest. Farid climbed after him just as a shout erupted behind them. A shot cracked the air. Sparks burst from the metal near Farid's hand as he pulled himself up.
He gritted his teeth, dragged himself in, and slammed the door shut. The train picked up speed, the city beginning to fall away. Through a narrow crack in the wood, Ayan saw dark figures running along the platform, their faces hidden by the glare of the rising sun.
Farid slumped against the wall, breathing hard.
A faint line of blood ran down his sleeve where the shot had grazed him.
"We're not safe yet," he murmured. "But for now, we bought a little time."
Ayan stared at the box, his fingers shaking.
"What's inside? Is it really worth all this?"
Farid met his eyes, the weight of a lifetime in his gaze.
"It's not just about us, Ayan. It's about everyone they've buried in silence."
Outside, the train roared into the countryside, leaving the city behind, but the echoes of pursuit followed in the distance like a shadow that would not lift. The countryside rolled past in a blur of muted greens and dry browns as the train groaned and rattled along its old iron tracks. Ayan sat with his back against the cold wooden wall of the freight car, the rusted box between his knees. Farid had wrapped his wounded arm with a strip of cloth torn from his shirt, but his breathing was steady now, his sharp eyes never resting for long on one place. The air inside smelled of grain and dust, every vibration of the wheels carrying a low hum that felt like a warning whisper beneath their feet. Hours had passed, yet the fear clung to Ayan's chest like a weight. The men chasing them had not been ordinary police. They moved too fast, too sure, and their silence was colder than any shout. He thought of his mother's tear-streaked face, her trembling hands that night. Had they reached her? Was she safe? His fingers tightened on the box. He could almost feel it pulse with secrets. Farid's gaze followed the boy's trembling hands. You've been staring at that thing as if it will answer you, he said quietly.
Ian licked his dry lips. You said my father left something in it. What if it's the only truth left?
Farid exhaled, long and slow, his eyes darting toward the door as the train curved around a bend.
Opening it here is a risk.
If it holds what I think it does, they'll feel its absence the moment it's revealed.
The boy shook his head. We've been running since the night began. I need to know why. I need to know who he was. Who I am.
Farid studied him, then reached for the small chain around his neck. From it, he pulled a narrow key, old, iron, the edges worn smooth by years.
He gave me this, he murmured. Told me I'd know when to use it. Ian's heart leapt. Then, now.
The train screeched briefly, slowing as it approached a lonely station with cracked tiles and peeling signs. No one was on the platform but a lone dog and a man selling tea from a battered kettle. The pause was brief, just enough for the boy's impatience to boil over.
Please, Ian whispered. Before they find us again. Farid's fingers hesitated, then slipped the key into the box's lock.
It turned with a reluctant click, the sound loud in the empty car.
Together they lifted the lid.
Inside lay not gold, not money, but a bundle of worn documents wrapped in oilcloth, a black and white photograph, and a small device no larger than a matchbox, its surface etched with strange lines that glinted faintly in the dim light.
Ian picked up the photograph first.
A young man stood beside a woman with familiar eyes. The man wore a plain jacket, but his hand rested protectively on her shoulder. Behind them, a tall building with a government seal loomed.
Ian's breath caught. That's Amma, and him? Farid nodded slowly. Your father, Cameron Malik. He wasn't just a driver, Ian. He worked inside the very office that hunts us now.
Ian's fingers trembled as he turned the picture over. On the back, a single line was scrawled in faded ink: if I vanish, find the key to the vault.
The truth must outlive me. The boy looked at the documents next.
Inside were stamped papers, letters with strange codes, and names, dozens of names, each marked with a red line. Men who had disappeared. Men whose families still waited.
What is this? Ian whispered.
Farid's voice was low, grim.
It is a list of those they silenced. Your father tried to expose them.
They called it treason. The boy's chest tightened.
Then this is proof?
It's more than proof, Farid said, picking up the small device. This holds the files he stole before they came for him.
This is why they want you. They think he gave you the trail.
The train shuddered as it picked up speed again, the countryside thinning into empty fields and rusted signal posts.
Ian stared at the tiny device, its etched lines glowing faintly now as if awakened by their touch.
Where do we take it? He asked.
Farid's eyes narrowed.
There's a man in Multan. An old journalist who never bowed.
If we reach him, this can go to the world. Ian's heart pounded. And then they'll stop chasing us? Farid's laugh was short, bitter. No, boy. That's when the real hunt begins. The train curved again, the horizon opening wide. Far ahead, a faint plume of dust followed the tracks. Not the wind. Not the earth.
A vehicle, fast, closing.
Farid's hand tightened on the box. They're not far. We may have hours, or less. Ian swallowed hard, staring at the photograph one more time.
His father's eyes seemed to meet his, calm, knowing, burdened.
Was this the life he had left for me? The boy thought. To run, to hide, to carry his war?
The whistle blew, long and haunting, as the train crossed an empty plain.
The box lay open now, its secrets breathing for the first time in 11 years.
And somewhere behind them, the shadows were gathering again. The train hissed as it slowed near Multan's outskirts, the wheels screeching against the worn steel rails. Dawn had melted into a pale, dusty morning, the city skyline rising ahead like a maze of old towers and newer scars. Ian pressed his face to the crack between the freight car's wooden panels, his heart racing at every figure on the platform. Street vendors were setting up their stalls, a few porters leaned against trolleys smoking cheap cigarettes, and a policeman stood yawning near a tea stall.
No black vans. No men in long coats. Not yet.
Farid adjusted the bandage on his arm, his expression tight but unreadable.
We leave here. Quietly. No running unless we must. Ian clutched the box, now wrapped in his old shawl. Will the journalist really help us? Farid's eyes softened for a moment.
If he's still the man I knew, he'll risk everything for the truth.
But truth is dangerous currency here. It buys enemies faster than friends.
The train lurched to a stop. They slipped out through the far side, keeping their heads low, mingling with the flow of early workers. The city smelled of diesel, spice, and damp earth. Streets bustled even in the first light, rickshaws buzzing like flies, hawkers calling prices of parathas and chai, stray dogs picking at old trash. Farid led Ian down a narrow lane lined with shuttered shops. After a few turns, they stopped at a faded sign that read Khalid Press and Stationery, its paint flaking, its door locked with a chain.
Farid knocked 3 times, paused, then twice more.
A minute later, the door creaked open a few inches, and a pair of weary eyes studied them.
Farid, a voice rasped.
It's been too long, Khalid, Farid murmured.
We bring what you once asked me to guard.
The chain slid off, and the door opened to reveal an old man with a thin frame and white stubble, his hands still ink-stained from years of printing words the powerful had tried to erase. He looked at Ian, then at the shawl in his arms. Inside, quickly, Khalid said. The shop smelled of paper and old glue. Posters half torn from the walls bore slogans from protests long silenced. Khalid led them through a back door into a cramped office with stacks of faded newspapers.
Farid placed the box on the table. It's his son. Kamran's boy.
Khalid froze. His eyes softened, but his mouth tightened with grief.
Kamran.
I told him this city would eat him alive.
He left this, Farid said. And they are already hunting.
Ian spoke, his voice raw.
Do you know what's inside?
They killed Yasser for this. My mother, she may be in their hands now.
Tell me what my father did.
Khalid opened the box with care.
His fingers brushed the documents, the photograph, the small etched device.
His eyes widened at the names, the stamps, the seals.
This is enough to tear the mask off half the city.
Disappearances, land seizures, bribes, all signed by men still in power. He picked up the device, turning it in his hand.
And this? It's a key.
But it's locked.
You'll need the passphrase. Farid frowned. Kamran said the boy would have the trail. Ian shook his head. I don't know any code. Only something Amma said once, when she thought I was asleep.
She whispered, even the river remembers.
Khalid's eyes lit with a strange spark. The river, the old server by the riverbank archives? Could it be the key phrase?
Before Farid could reply, a noise from the street cut the air, sudden shouts, the heavy thud of boots, the screech of tires. Khalid's face drained of color.
They found you. Farid moved fast, slamming the shutters closed. Back door. Now.
Ian clutched the box as Khalid shoved open a narrow passage leading to the alley behind the shop. The smell of old newspapers and dust clung to their clothes as they slipped out. But the alley was not empty. 2 men stood at the far end, blocking the street, their faces half-shadowed, their coats too heavy for the warm morning.
Farid pulled Ian behind a stack of crates. Go left. Toward the tannery.
The boy ran, his small feet splashing through puddles, the box tight in his arms. Shouts erupted behind them, the old city suddenly alive with the hunt.
Doors slammed, shutters rattled, a hawker's stall toppled as one of the pursuers crashed through it.
Khalid lagged behind, his old bones not built for the chase. Farid grabbed his arm and pulled him along, his injured arm screaming in protest. They turned into another lane only to find a black van crawling at its far end, its engine purring like a predator.
Trap, Farid hissed.
He scanned the walls, low rooftops, broken balconies, a rusted ladder leading upward. He shoved Ian toward it.
Climb. Fast.
The boy scrambled up, fingers gripping the cold rungs.
Below, boots pounded closer, voices echoing, "Don't let them reach the market. Cut them off."
Farid climbed after him, every muscle burning.
Khalid wheezed, his hands slipping on the metal, but somehow he pulled himself up.
From the rooftop, they could see the city stretching out, mosques gleaming in the weak sun, alleys coiling like snakes, the river glinting far away.
Ayan's heart pounded. "Where now?" Farid pointed toward the minaret on the horizon.
"There, behind it lies the old river archive.
If that phrase is true, the device will open there."
But the van below disgorged its men, and they were already climbing another side. One raised a handheld scanner that beeped faintly, tracking, searching.
"They're locking on the signal," Khalid gasped. "That thing in your hands, it's not silent." Ayan looked down at the device glowing faintly in the box, its etched lines pulsing like a heartbeat.
"They'll follow it anywhere," Farid muttered.
Then, from somewhere below, a voice boomed through a loudspeaker, "Ayan Malik. Surrender the package. Your mother will be spared." The boy froze. Was it true? Was she alive? Were they lying? Farid's grip tightened on his shoulder. "Don't listen.
Lies are their sharpest knife."
But Ayan's chest heaved.
The city below felt like a net tightening around them, and his mother's name was now a chain pulling him backward.
The rooftop felt like it was tilting beneath Ayan's feet.
The city stretched out in all directions, narrow alleys twisting like dark veins, the river a faint silver thread far away, the call to prayer echoing from a distant mosque. His lungs burned from the climb, his hands clutched the rusted box so tight his knuckles turned white.
Below, the van's doors slammed.
Above, boots scraped against the ledge as the pursuers hauled themselves up, their long coats flaring in the morning wind.
"Ayan Malik," the voice boomed again from the loudspeaker below. "You cannot run forever. Give us what you carry. Your mother is alive, for now."
The words pierced him like cold steel.
Alive? For now?
His throat felt dry, his mind a storm of fear and anger.
Was this a trap, or a chance to save her?
Farid crouched beside him, his injured arm held close.
"Don't listen. That is how they break you.
Once you give them what they want, you and your mother both vanish." Khalid, breathing hard, leaned against the low parapet. His old hands trembled as he scanned the rooftops.
"We can still make the minaret if we move fast. But not if we freeze."
The first pursuer's head appeared over the ledge. His face was pale, his eyes sharp, a pistol gripped in one gloved hand. Another climbed beside him, and another, 3 in all, their movements precise, trained.
They didn't shout threats now, they just advanced, slow and deliberate. Farid pushed Ayan behind him.
"Take the ladder to the far side," he whispered. "I'll hold them here."
"No." Ayan's voice cracked. "You're bleeding, you can't. Go." Farid barked.
But as Ayan turned, another figure emerged on the far rooftop, blocking the escape route, a man in a worn jacket, scarf wrapped tight around his neck.
He raised a hand, palm open.
"Stop running," the man called.
"It's me. Hamza." Farid stiffened. "Hamza?"
His voice was laced with both recognition and disbelief.
Ayan looked between them. "You know him?"
Hamza stepped closer, his voice calm but urgent.
"Farid, listen. You're being used. That boy, he's bait. They let you steal the box because they wanted you to bring it out. There's a tracker inside. They'll follow it no matter where you run." Farid's eyes narrowed to slits. "You were one of us once." "I still am," Hamza said. "That's why I'm here. Hand me the box, I'll get the boy's mother out. That's the deal." Khalid spat on the rooftop. "Deal? With them?
You've sold your soul." The men behind the ledge were climbing fully onto the rooftop now, their boots thudding like war drums. Hamza stood still, halfway between the hunters and the hunted, his scarf fluttering in the wind.
Ayan's heart pounded in his ears. Farid whispered, "He's lying. I've seen their tricks before."
Hamza's voice cut through the wind.
"Ayan. You want to save your mother?" Give me the box. She's at the safe house near the river. They will kill her if you don't act now. The boy looked at Farid, at Khalid, then at the man with the scarf. His arms trembled around the box. Could Hamza be telling the truth? His mother's face rose in his mind, her tired eyes, her whispered warnings, the fear that never left her since his father disappeared. Farid pulled a small knife from his boot, his voice low. We moved to the next roof. Don't hesitate. But Ayan didn't move. His legs felt frozen, his breath shallow. One step would decide everything, his mother's life, the truth in the box, the men who were once his father's allies and now possibly his hunters. The pursuers raised their weapons. Hamza's eyes pleaded silently. Farid's knife glinted. The wind carried the smell of smoke from somewhere far below. A pigeon burst from a nearby ledge, startled into the pale sky. Ayan! Farid shouted. The boy tightened his grip on the box, his heart a hammer in his chest. The rooftop seemed to shrink as the world closed in, morning sun washing the bricks in pale gold, the river glinting like a blade in the distance, the city below roaring awake with engines and horns. Ayan's chest heaved as he clutched the box tighter, the cold metal biting through the fabric of his shawl. Hamza stood in front of him, hand extended, face calm but eyes too steady, like a man who already knew how this would end. Farid crouched low, blade in hand, his jaw set, his gaze never leaving Hamza's. Behind them, the pursuers fanned out, their boots echoing on the rooftop tiles as they moved closer. Ayan, choose now. Hamza urged, his voice cutting through the rising wind. If you want to see your mother alive, give it to me. There is no time for games. She's lying, Farid growled, his blade flashing as he shifted his weight. Men like him trade lives like coins. Your father died fighting their promises. Ayan's heart pounded so hard it hurt. His mother's face swam before his eyes, her trembling hands, the fear in her voice that night. What if Hamza is telling the truth? What if this is the only way to save her? But then he saw Yasser's face too, the old rickshaw driver who had bled for him, who had whispered, "Run, don't stop," before the door was torn apart. I don't know who to trust. Ayan shouted, his voice breaking. Hamza stepped closer, his palm open. Trust the blood you came from. I fought with your father once, too. He wanted this box safe, yes, but not at the cost of your mother's life. Give it to me. Let me trade it. Farid barked a harsh laugh. Trade? You mean deliver it, and bury the truth with it. I know you're kind, Hamza. The men behind the ledge raised their guns, fanning out like wolves circling a wounded prey. Last chance, one of them called. The wind whipped Ayan's hair into his eyes. His fingers trembled on the box. He could feel the weight of everything inside, his father's secret, the list of the missing, the device that could open locked doors in powerful places. He took a shaky breath, his gaze darting between Farid's fierce stare and Hamza's outstretched hand. Then something inside him hardened. He remembered his father's faded note, "If I vanish, find the key to the vault." The truth must outlive me. It did not say trade it. It did not say choose safety. It said truth. Ayan backed up, his small hands clutching the box like a shield. No. I won't give it. Hamza's eyes narrowed. Boy. Before he could finish, Farid lunged. His blade flashed, catching the sunlight, and Hamza stumbled back with a hiss of pain as the tip sliced his sleeve. The rooftop erupted, shouts, a gunshot cracking against the parapet, shards of brick flying. Farid shoved Ayan hard. Run! Ayan sprinted toward the far side of the roof, his feet slipping on the dusty tiles. Behind him, Hamza cursed, grabbing his wounded arm, and the pursuers surged forward, firing wild shots that whined off the stone. Khalid threw an old crate in their path, buying seconds. Farid blocked the narrow ledge with his own body, his blade flashing like a cornered animal's fangs. Ayan! Down the drainpipe! Farid roared. The boy swung over the edge, his heart hammering as his fingers slid down the cold metal pipe. Bullets sparked above him, voices shouted, the city below spinning in his vision. He dropped onto a balcony, stumbled, and ran through a half-open door into a dark stairwell.
Behind him, chaos reigned, shouts, a scream, the crash of bodies struggling on the rooftop.
Farid! Ian cried, his voice lost in the clamor.
He tore down the stairwell, clutching the box to his chest. The smell of damp stone and old cooking oil filled his nose. A door slammed somewhere above, boots thundered down the steps behind him. He burst into a narrow alley, sunlight striking his face like a slap. Rickshaws and vendors turned their heads as the boy darted through, weaving between sacks of grain and bicycles, his breath ragged, his vision blurring with tears he couldn't stop.
Was Farid alive? Was Khalid? He didn't dare look back.
The river glinted at the end of the lane, closer now. The minaret rose beyond it like a silent watcher. The phrase his mother had once whispered, "Even the river remembers," echoed in his head like a drumbeat.
Behind him, the van's engine roared again.
He clutched the box tighter and ran. The river smelled of rust and wet earth as Ian stumbled onto the bank, his breath tearing at his chest. Morning had grown brighter, but the sky was still pale, veiled by the haze of the waking city. Boats swayed against the cracked stone steps, their ropes creaking. Traders shouted across the water, gulls circled overhead, and the world seemed unaware that a boy carrying a secret was running for his life. He dropped to his knees near the old pier, the box pressed against his ribs like a living heart. His fingers ached from clutching it. The sound of distant engines still chased him, faint but closing, black vans weaving through the streets, men with scanners that could smell the device from afar. He scanned the bank for a sign, any sign, of what his father had meant. Even the river remembers. The river archive was said to be here, somewhere behind the faded minaret. A warehouse squatted by the water, its doors chained and rust streaking its corrugated walls. An old sign hung crooked, "Municipal Records, closed since 2011. It was the kind of place people walked past without looking.
Ian's heart thudded. He pressed his palm to the cool metal door. Locked.
"Come on, please," he whispered.
He stepped back, glancing left and right.
The alley behind the building led to a dead end. A cluster of fishermen mended nets nearby, their eyes tired, uninterested. No pursuers yet, but the air carried a tremor, like the city was holding its breath. Then he heard it, a faint beeping from the box. He froze. The etch device inside glowed softly now, its lines flickering as if recognizing something nearby. Ian opened the lid, his hands shaking, and the glow pulsed stronger when he faced the warehouse door. "This is it," he whispered. The beeping grew faster. Footsteps. Voices. Not far. He shoved the box under his shawl and searched the door again. A small metal plate near the handle bore a keypad, its numbers faded but still alive. He pressed his fingers to it, and the glow from the device flared. A whisper escaped his lips, "Even the river remembers." The pad beeped once, then the lock clicked. The door swung inward, and a rush of cold, stale air greeted him. Rows of shelves stretched into the dimness, paper files piled like forgotten bones. The river's damp breath had eaten away the edges, but deeper inside, a faint blue light glowed. Ian stepped in, heart hammering. The door closed softly behind him. The glow came from a small pedestal in the center of the room, a reader, old and dust-covered, but humming faintly as the device in his hands pulsed to match its rhythm. He placed the device on it. The reader came alive. A projection flickered against the damp wall, a face, familiar and distant. His father. Cameron Malik's voice crackled through the old speakers, rough but steady. "If you are watching this, my son, then I have failed to return. They will tell you I betrayed them. They will tell you I stole from the state. But what I took was only the truth." Ian's eyes stung. "They will hunt you," the voice continued. "They will promise safety if you give it back. Do not believe them. Inside this archive is proof of their crimes, names, orders, disappearances. Get it to someone who still has a voice. The world forgets easily. But if even one river remembers, so will the people." The projection faded, the blue light dimming to a steady glow. Ian wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve. "Baba, where are you now?" A door slammed outside. Voices. Heavy boots. He snatched the device from the pedestal and stuffed the documents back into the box. His father's words still echoed in his chest, but reality had caught up. They were here. The side window shattered as a black-gloved hand smashed through, reaching for the latch. Ian ducked, heart racing, and darted toward the back of the archive. A small iron grate led to the river canal, half-rusted and dripping. The box was heavy. The water below was dark. Behind him, the door burst open. "Don't run, boy," a voice barked. Ian yanked at the grate, his fingers slick with sweat. It gave with a screech, the cold morning air rushing in. He swung himself out, landing hard on the mossy stones, his knees scraping. The river lapped hungrily a few feet below. Engines roared on the street above. More boots. More shouts. He pressed the box to his chest, staring at the dark water. "If I jump, I may lose it. If I stay, I lose everything." Then, faintly across the river, a figure waved, a fisherman, no, a boy his age, holding out a hand from a wooden boat. "This way," the stranger hissed. The shouts grew louder. Ian took a deep breath. Would he leap into the river, trusting a stranger's outstretched hand? Or turn and fight for the truth his father left behind, even if it meant capture? The wind howled through the broken grate as the first pursuer's shadow fell across the wall. The river looked colder than the winter night that took his father. Dark ripples carried trash and broken reeds, the smell of oil and silt rising like a warning. Ian's breath came in clouds as he stared at the boy in the wooden boat. The stranger's hand trembled but did not falter. "Jump! Now," he urged in a sharp whisper. Behind Ian, the clatter of boots and the metallic click of a weapon's safety being released cut through the morning air. Ian's heart pounded as if it would crack his ribs. He thought of Farid bleeding or maybe dead on that rooftop. He thought of his mother, her face pressed against the window as the vans circled their street that night. And he thought of the voice he had just heard, the one he had not heard in years, his father's voice telling him to carry the truth. He leapt. The cold hit like a slap. The river swallowed him, its filth and chill choking his breath. The box clung to him as he kicked and fought the current. Strong fingers grabbed his sleeve and pulled, hauling him into the small boat. Water streamed from his hair and clothes as he gasped, shivering, clutching the wooden edge with numb hands. The boy pushed the boat off the stone wall with a worn oar, eyes darting toward the pier where the black-clad men now crowded, pointing and shouting. One raised his gun, but the current had already carried them out of reach. Bullets cracked across the water, sending sprays of dirty foam into the air. "Keep your head down," the boy hissed. Ian ducked low as the boat slipped behind a row of moored barges, out of the line of sight. His heart still raced, the chill sinking deep into his bones. The boy, perhaps a year older than him, with sharp eyes and a scarf wrapped tight around his neck, looked back. "You've made them angry," he muttered. "What's in that box?" Ian clutched it tighter. "Who are you?" "They call me Zaman," the boy replied, his gaze never leaving the river. "And you?" "Ian." Zaman nodded, as if the name meant something. "You're the one they're hunting." Ian's stomach clenched. "How do you know?" Zaman gave a humorless smile. "Because they searched my father's shop last night. Took him. Said he was hiding something that belonged to a boy." Ian felt a chill that had nothing to do with the river. "I'm sorry." Zaman shrugged one shoulder. "If they want you, there must be a reason. That means you have a choice: keep running until they catch you, or let me take you to someone who can actually help." "Who?" Zaman's eyes flicked to the far side of the river where narrow alleys wound between old warehouses and broken shrines. "There's a woman. She calls herself Nadia. People say she was one of them, once, before she turned. If your box is what I think it is, she's the only one who can open it properly." Ian hesitated. The words of his father echoed, "Get it to someone who still has a voice." But what if this boy was lying? What if this Nadia was another trap? The sound of another engine roared upriver. The vans were moving to cut them off. Zaman tightened his grip on the oar. "Decide fast. Do you want to keep floating until they fish you out?
Ayan swallowed hard.
The city skyline loomed around them, the minaret fading behind a veil of morning haze. He felt the box's weight like a heartbeat in his arms. "Take me to her," he said. The boat slipped into a narrow channel where the water turned black and the smell of fish guts and damp stone thickened.
Rats darted along the bank.
Above them, the sky narrowed to a strip of pale gray.
Zaman finally slowed. "From here we walk."
They dragged the boat under a crumbling arch and hid it behind stacked crates. The alley ahead twisted like a snake. Ayan's shoes squelched as they moved, the chill settling deeper in his legs. He wanted to ask more, who this woman was, how Zaman found her, but before he could speak, a noise cut him off.
Footsteps. Many. Closing in. Zaman pushed him against the wall, finger to his lips.
They pressed into the shadow as a group of men in black passed the mouth of the alley, their radios crackling. One paused, turned his head, Ayan held his breath until the man cursed and moved on.
When the echoes faded, Zaman exhaled. "They're sweeping the whole district." Ayan whispered, "How far?" "Not far," Zaman said. "But it's not just them. There are others looking for that box. You've stirred something bigger than you know."
They moved again, slipping between shuttered shops and piles of broken furniture until a faint light appeared ahead, a doorway, half covered by a hanging rug.
Zaman lifted it and nodded for Ayan to enter.
Inside was a small room that smelled of herbs and metal. A woman in her late 30s sat cross-legged on a low cushion, a lamp burning beside her. Her eyes lifted, sharp and unreadable. "So this is the boy," she said softly.
Ayan felt his chest tighten. "Are you Nadia?" She didn't answer immediately.
Her gaze shifted to the box in his arms.
"Do you know what you carry?"
"I think so," Ayan whispered.
"My father said it's proof."
Nadia reached out her hand, but didn't touch it.
"Proof can free a nation.
Or bury a family." A sudden crash echoed outside, someone kicking at the crates.
Zaman stiffened.
"They're here already." Nadia rose to her feet with surprising speed.
"Then you brought them with you?"
She looked at Ayan, her eyes suddenly hard.
"We have one chance.
Either you give me that box now, and trust me, or they'll take it and you'll never see the truth again."
Ayan clutched it to his chest.
His heart pounded.
"How do I know you're not one of them?"
Her lips curved in a grim line.
"You don't." The footsteps outside multiplied.
Shadows moved across the thin curtains.
The room seemed to shrink with every passing second.
The air was heavy, filled with the sharp smell of damp rugs and burning oil. Ayan's fingers dug into the box as if it were the only thing tethering him to life. Outside, boots scraped against cobblestone, radios hissed with clipped commands, and a low thud rattled the doorframe. Zaman's hand hovered near his belt where a rusted blade hung, his jaw tight. Nadia stood still, her scarf loose around her shoulders, her eyes calm yet calculating, like someone who had faced danger far too many times to flinch at its shadow. "Ayan," she said again, her voice low but firm, "if you hesitate, you lose everything.
Those men outside, they don't want truth. They want silence.
And you're the noise they can't afford."
Ayan's heart thudded.
His father's voice echoed in his head, "Get it to someone who still has a voice."
Could this woman be that person? Or was this just another mask, another trap?
His legs trembled as the pounding on the outer door grew louder. Zaman whispered harshly, "Decide, or we all die here." The boy's eyes darted to the narrow window at the back, too small for a fast escape with the box, too risky with the alley already crawling with their pursuers. There was no running this time. He swallowed hard, then stepped forward, arms shaking, and held the box out to Nadia.
"Take it," he said, voice cracking.
Her eyes softened just a fraction as she took it from his hands, her fingers brushing his for a brief, cold moment.
"Good. Now stand back."
She carried the box to the low table, placed it gently on a cloth, and slid the device free.
Its faint glow pulsed like a heartbeat.
Nadia pressed her palm against a hidden latch on the side of the table, the wood groaned, revealing a narrow compartment lined with lead sheets. She placed the box inside just as the doorframe splintered behind them. The first man stormed in, his black vest gleaming under the lamplight.
"Hands up," he barked. Zaman lunged before the man could raise his weapon. The blade flashed, striking the man's wrist, sending his gun skittering across the floor. Another boot slammed the half-open door, and two more men poured in, their eyes locking on the boy and the woman. Nadia's voice cut through the chaos. "Down!" She flipped the rug on the floor with a violent tug. Beneath it was a hatch one Ayan hadn't noticed. A dark chute yawned below, smelling of cold earth and damp stone. "In," she ordered. Ayan didn't think. He dropped, scraping his knees as the narrow tunnel swallowed him. Zaman followed, hissing as a stray bullet grazed his shoulder. Nadia came last, slamming the hatch shut just as the room above erupted with shouts. The tunnel was barely wide enough to crawl. Their breaths echoed in the dark, the sound of boots thundering above them. Dust rained down as the pursuers tore the room apart. "Where does this go?" Ayan whispered, his voice shaking. "Under the river," Nadia replied curtly. "If they haven't found the other side yet." The tunnel twisted, the damp bricks slick beneath their hands. Ayan's chest burned with each breath. The image of the box in Nadia's hands haunted him. Had he done the right thing? Or had he just given away the only piece of his father left? After what felt like forever, a dim light appeared ahead, a grating, rusted and half-buried in mud. Nadia pushed it aside, revealing a forgotten storeroom beneath an old warehouse. The air was heavy with the scent of grain and salt. They climbed out, one by one. Nadia closed the grate, bolting it from above. "This place is safe, for now." Zaman slumped against a wall, pressing his hand to his bleeding shoulder. "Safe? They were on us like hounds." "They always are," Nadia murmured, setting the box on a dusty crate. "But now we move before dawn ends. The longer this stays in one place, the closer death comes." Ayan stepped closer. "What will you do with it?" Nadia looked at him, her eyes unreadable. "Not what they expect. There's a network still breathing under all this rot, people who won't look away." "But I want to see what's inside," Ayan said, his voice rising with a sudden boldness. "It was my father's. I deserve to know." Nadia studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "Tomorrow night. When we're clear." Ayan's hands curled into fists. He wanted to shout that tomorrow might never come, that every minute was a risk, but before he could speak, a sound rose outside. Distant, but growing. Not boots. Not engines. Bells. A series of short, urgent chimes from the river watchtowers. Zaman's face paled. "That's a district lockdown signal." Nadia swore under her breath. "They've sealed the river." Ayan felt the cold creep back into his bones. The box was hidden. The tunnel behind them was already compromised. And now the river, their only path out, was closing like a trap. "How long until they find this place?" he whispered. Nadia's gaze moved to the narrow skylight, where gray morning was turning to sharp white daylight. "Hours, maybe less. We have to move before the net tightens." The bells kept tolling, their hollow chimes cutting through the narrow alleys like cold steel. Each ring was a warning, the district was being sealed. Gates would close, bridges would lock, patrols would tighten every path that smelled of escape. Ayan pressed his back against the rough wall of the storeroom, the box just a few feet away on a dusty crate, its glow faint but steady, like a heartbeat he could not silence. Nadia was already moving, her scarf tied tight, her fingers brushing the edges of the hatch they had come through. "This tunnel will be watched by now," she murmured. "They know where the river meets. We go above." Zaman, pale from the shallow wound on his shoulder, let out a dry laugh. "Above? They've got the streets crawling." "Then we become shadows," Nadia replied flatly. Her eyes shifted to Ayan. "You're small. They look for a boy carrying something heavy. Let them. Tonight, you'll carry nothing." Ayan's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" She reached under the crate, pulling out a decoy, a wooden box, almost identical in size but empty. "They'll search, they'll grab, and they'll think they've won. Meanwhile, the truth moves elsewhere. Ian shook his head. No. My father died for that. I won't leave it.
Nadia's gaze sharpened.
And if you're caught?
Then his death is wasted, and so is yours. The bells tolled again, closer now. Zaman staggered to the window, peering through the cracked frame. They're moving in lines, he said.
3 streets over. Dogs with them.
The word made Ian's blood run cold. Dogs meant scent would betray him no matter how silent his steps. Nadia snatched the real box from the crate and slid it beneath her cloak.
I'll draw them away. You and Zaman will take the East Bridge before it locks.
There's an old tram tunnel, it leads out of the district.
Ian blinked. You want me to leave you with it?
Yes, she said simply.
Zaman grunted. She's right. If we split, we survive. If we cling together, we burn.
Ian stared at them both, suspicion crawling into his mind like smoke.
Was this her plan all along? To get the box and vanish? To leave him with nothing but the smell of the river and the sound of closing gates?
His fingers twitched with the urge to snatch it back, but Nadia's eyes were like cold iron, unreadable, unshaken.
Trust is a choice, she said quietly, as if hearing his thoughts. And in times like this, it's also a risk.
Before he could answer, a crash split the air, a door kicked in 2 alleys away, shouts rising, boots pounding. The scent of smoke drifted through the cracked wood.
Time's gone, Nadia hissed. Move.
She shoved the empty decoy box into Ian's hands, pushed Zaman toward the back door, and slipped into the opposite street without looking back. Her cloak swirled once in the pale daylight, then vanished into the tangle of shadows. Ian's legs moved before his mind did. He followed Zaman, the decoy heavy in his arms, his heart a knot of doubt and dread. They darted between shuttered stalls and overturned crates, the sound of whistles and barking growing louder behind them. People began closing their windows, pulling children inside.
The city was folding in on itself. She's baiting them, Zaman panted. If they take the hook, we might make it. Might, Ian echoed bitterly.
The East Bridge loomed ahead, a rusted span over dark water, its iron gates already half lowered. A pair of guards checked papers at the far side, their rifles slung lazily.
No vans yet. Not here. Not yet. Keep your head down, Zaman murmured. Walk. Don't run.
They stepped onto the bridge. The river wind bit their faces.
Ian felt every eye like a knife.
A dog barked in the distance.
A shout went up somewhere behind.
Papers, one guard grunted. Zaman handed over a crumpled slip, his fingers steady despite the tremor in his jaw.
The guard glanced at it, sniffed, waved him through. His gaze fell on Ian next. And you, boy?
I'm with him, Ian said quickly, forcing his voice steady.
Carrying tools. The guard eyed the box. Tools? Zaman nodded. Old electric meters. Scrap.
The guard snorted, uninterested, but just as he handed the paper back, a voice crackled over his radio, Bridge East, hold all crossings.
Target may be en route. Ian's blood froze. The guard's eyes narrowed. Wait.
His hand reached for the latch on the box.
Zaman's fingers twitched toward his blade. Ian's heart thundered.
If the guard opened it, they'd see it was empty and know the real one had gone another way.
That would send the whole net snapping shut.
The guard's fingers brushed the latch. The guard's hand hovered over the latch, fingers rough and calloused, his eyes narrowing as the radio repeated its sharp command, Bridge East, hold all crossings.
Target may be en route.
The wind howled across the river, carrying the sound of more boots in the distance.
Ian's fingers clenched around the box, his knuckles white.
His heart pounded so loud he was sure the guard could hear it.
Zaman's hand drifted closer to the blade hidden in his sleeve.
One twitch, one wrong word, and the bridge would explode in chaos. The dog barked again, closer this time. The smell of damp metal and river oil pressed against their faces. Ian forced himself to breathe. His father's voice echoed in his head,
sometimes the truth must be carried by silence, not by war. He swallowed, eyes wide, and whispered, "Sir, please, it's only scrap. We're late for the repair yard. If we miss the overseer's round, we don't eat tonight."
The guard hesitated, fingers still on the latch.
His gaze flicked from Ayan's mud-stained clothes to Zaman's pale face.
The boy looked younger in that moment, trembling not just from fear but from the cold that still clung to his soaked clothes.
"From the radio, report, East Bridge?"
The guard grunted, thumb brushing the latch once more.
The metal clicked but did not open. His partner, a tall man with weary eyes, muttered, "We'll miss the net if we hold every kid with a box." The first guard exhaled through his nose, a short, sharp breath. "Move," he barked, stepping aside. "Next." Ayan lowered his head, clutched the decoy tighter, and walked.
Each step felt like a knife's edge, the boards of the bridge groaning under his weight. Zaman followed, his jaw tight, eyes fixed forward. Only when they stepped onto the far bank did Ayan allow himself to breathe again. The shouts behind them faded into the hum of traffic, the bells still tolling but distant now.
The East District lay ahead, narrow lanes, market smoke, a tram track curling toward the edge of the city. Zaman grabbed Ayan's sleeve and pulled him into a shadowed alley.
"You spoke well," he muttered.
"I thought we'd be fish food." Ayan nodded, though his chest still burned with unease.
"She said this would work," he whispered, his eyes flicking toward the river behind them.
"But what if they catch her?" Zaman didn't answer at first.
He leaned against the wall, wiping the sweat from his brow despite the chill. "If she's smart, and she's already 3 streets away, leaving false trails."
"But what if she doesn't come back?"
Ayan's voice was sharper than he intended.
"What if she was never going to?" Zaman's gaze hardened. "You think she betrayed us?" "I don't know what to think," Ayan said.
"First Hamza, now her, everyone says they want to help, but my father trusted no one."
"Maybe he was right." Zaman pushed off the wall. "Trust is a blade. Hold it too tight, you bleed. Hold it too loose, it cuts you anyway." They moved deeper into the East District, the tramline humming faintly underfoot. Vendors whispered of checkpoints ahead, of bridges locked, of streets swept clean by men with dogs. The city was folding tighter by the hour. Ayan's mind raced. The real box was with Nadia now, somewhere behind the locked gates. Was she running to safety or delivering it straight into the hands of those they fled? The weight of the empty decoy felt heavier with each step. "Where's the tram tunnel?" he asked. Zaman pointed toward a half-collapsed arch near the freight yards. "There. But if the lockdown spreads, it might be watched too." They ducked under the arch, into the damp hollow where rusted tracks disappeared into darkness.
The air smelled of mold and coal dust.
Rats skittered along the beams.
Ayan set the empty box down and rubbed his cold hands together.
His stomach growled, his legs ached. "What if we wait for her? What if she brings it?" Zaman frowned. "Wait? Here? With the bells screaming?"
"They'll sweep this place by sundown."
The boy hesitated.
For the first time since the rooftop, he felt the sting of doubt more than fear. The city was a maze of locked doors and vanishing promises. His father's message burned in his memory, "Get it to someone who still has a voice."
Was Nadia that voice? Or had he just handed his father's truth to the very shadow they were meant to expose? A noise interrupted his thoughts, a faint metallic clatter down the tunnel. Not rats. Footsteps. Zaman's hand found his blade. Did she find us?
But the silhouette that emerged from the dark was taller, heavier. A faint red beam swept across the tunnel wall, followed by the cold click of a rifle's bolt.
"Found you," a voice said.
More figures stepped from the dark, their faces masked, their movements too precise for mere patrolmen. They were not here to question, they were here to end the trail.
Ayan's breath hitched.
The bridge had been a narrow escape, but now the net had followed them underground.
The leader raised his rifle, its barrel glinting in the dim light.
"Where's the box?"
Ayan's hands twitched toward the decoy at his feet.
The tunnel air turned heavy as the masked men advanced, their boots crunching on gravel, their rifles steady. The leader, a tall figure with a scar running from his jaw to his neck, stepped forward until the barrel of his gun nearly touched the decoy box at Ian's feet. His eyes, barely visible behind the mask, gleamed with cold certainty. "This is empty," he said flatly, his voice cutting through the damp air. "Where's the real one, boy?" Ian's throat tightened. His fingers twitched, his breath shallow. Zaman shifted beside him, his blade hidden but ready, his stance low and tense. The tunnel felt narrower with every passing second, as if the darkness itself was pressing against their backs. Ian wanted to run, to scream, to fight, but he knew one wrong move would turn this place into his grave. I don't know what you're talking about," Ian whispered, trying to sound confused, harmless. "It's just scrap. I told the guards already. We were taking it to the yard." The scarred man didn't flinch. He signaled with a slight motion of his hand, and two of his men stepped to the side, blocking the tunnel's only exit. Another knelt, prying open the decoy. His gloved fingers sifted through the false wires and bent plates, his frown deepening. "Empty," he confirmed. The leader crouched until his mask was level with Ian's eyes. "You're brave for your age," he said quietly. "But bravery is cheap. Truth is expensive. Tell me where the real one is, and I'll make sure you live to see the sun again." Ian's heartbeat thundered in his ears. The real one, Nadia had it. If he spoke her name now, she was lost. If he stayed silent, he might be the one who vanished. Zaman's eyes flicked toward him, a silent question: do we fight? Or do we stall? The leader tilted his head. "Time is running, boy." Before Ian could speak, a faint echo rolled through the tunnel, a sharp hiss of compressed air, followed by the distant slam of a gate. The masked men stiffened, their heads snapping toward the sound. It came from deeper in the tunnel, the direction they had not yet searched. "Movement," one of them whispered. And then, a voice, faint, strained, but familiar. "Ian." It was Nadia. The men reacted instantly, half of them moving toward the sound, their rifles raised. The scarred leader grabbed Ian by the collar, dragging him upright. "So," he hissed, "you didn't come alone." Zaman's hand tightened on his blade. "Now," he whispered fiercely. Ian acted without thinking. He shoved the decoy box at the leader's knees, the sharp corner striking hard. The man stumbled, his grip loosening just enough. Zaman lunged, his blade flashing in the dim light, striking the nearest rifle aside. Gunfire cracked, the tunnel filling with smoke and echoes. Ian ran, not away, but toward the sound of Nadia's voice. The tunnel bent sharply, the damp air growing colder. Behind him, shouts erupted, boots scraping on stone, bullets sparking against metal beams. Zaman's curses mingled with the chaos, the clash of steel and the hiss of a dying flashlight. He turned a corner and froze. Nadia was there, but not as he remembered. Her clothes were torn, her cheek bruised, and in her hands was the real box, its edges glowing faintly as though it had come alive. She looked at him with wide, desperate eyes. "They found me," she whispered. "I had to come back." Before he could answer, a silhouette emerged behind her, one of the masked men, his rifle raised, a cold smile beneath his hood. Ian felt the world slow. His mind screamed at him to move, to speak, to choose. If he rushed forward, they might both die. If he hesitated, the man would take her and the truth, with a single pull of the trigger. And through it all, the bells above the city kept tolling, as if counting down the last seconds of their fragile chance. The masked man behind Nadia tightened his grip on the rifle, the dim tunnel light catching the steel as his finger brushed the trigger. Ian's breath caught, every muscle in his body locked between fear and fury. He saw the faint glow of the box in Nadia's hands, pulsing like a living thing, his father's truth, their only chance to expose the lies that had devoured their city. The air was damp, cold, and heavy with gunpowder from the skirmish behind them. Zaman's shouts still echoed, steel clashing against steel, but growing weaker as the masked men pressed him deeper into the shadows. Nadia's lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came. Her eyes met Ian's, pleading, afraid, and yet determined. "Run," she mouthed. The man behind her shoved the barrel forward, close to her ribs. "Give it," he growled. "Now."
Ian moved before he could think.
His fingers found a loose chunk of stone at his feet, slick with moisture, and hurled it with all the strength his trembling arms could muster. It struck the man's mask with a sharp crack, making him stumble just as Nadia twisted free. The rifle went off, the bullet sparking against the tunnel wall, showering them with bits of rust and dust.
"Go!"
Nadia yelled this time, her voice breaking the stifling silence.
They ran.
The tunnel ahead curved sharply, the air growing colder as it sloped downward.
Behind them, the masked men regrouped, their boots hammering the tracks like war drums.
Zaman's figure appeared for a moment through the haze of smoke, his arm bloodied but his eyes burning. "Keep going," he roared, slashing at the nearest pursuer to buy them seconds. Ian's lungs burned as he sprinted, his bare feet slipping on the damp rails.
Nadia clutched the glowing box to her chest, its light now faintly illuminating their path.
The tunnel opened into a wide maintenance chamber lined with pipes and rusted scaffolding. Water dripped from above, forming shallow puddles that rippled with each frantic step. "This way," Nadia panted, pointing toward a metal staircase that led up into the darkness. Ian followed, his mind a blur of questions.
"You said you'd draw them off, why did you come back?"
"I tried," she whispered, her voice raw.
"They knew. They were waiting. I couldn't let them take it."
As they climbed, the sound of boots below grew louder.
The masked leader's voice echoed through the chamber, "Don't kill the boy. Bring them both."
Zaman stumbled into view at the tunnel's mouth, bleeding, his blade gone. He threw something, a flare, that exploded in a shower of white sparks, momentarily blinding their pursuers. Then he staggered after them, one hand pressed to his side. The staircase rattled under their weight. It led to a heavy hatch overhead, sealed with a rusted wheel.
Nadia shoved the box into Ian's arms.
"Hold this."
He clutched it tightly as she strained against the wheel.
It groaned, screeched, then turned halfway. The masked men were already halfway up the stairs.
"Faster!" Zaman barked, his voice hoarse. Ian pushed beside Nadia, his small hands adding to hers.
With a final wrenching twist, the hatch snapped free, flooding the stairwell with a burst of icy night air. Beyond it lay a forgotten freight yard, silent, overgrown with weeds, the moonlight painting everything silver.
"Go!" Zaman shoved Ian up through the hatch first, then Nadia.
He scrambled after them, just as a gloved hand reached for his boot. He kicked it free and slammed the hatch shut.
The night was bitter and still.
The freight yard stretched like a graveyard of iron giants, abandoned trains, broken cranes, silent tracks leading nowhere. In the distance, the bells still tolled, muffled now but relentless. Nadia leaned against a rusted cargo container, clutching her ribs. "We can't keep running like this," she whispered. "They'll track us." Ian stared at her, his voice trembling.
"Tell me the truth. Who are you really working for?" "Because they knew about you. They were after you, not me."
Her eyes glimmered in the moonlight, tired, haunted. "I was working for your father," she said. "Until the night he disappeared."
Zaman wiped the blood from his lip. "That doesn't answer him."
She looked down at the box, its glow now soft and steady in Ian's hands.
"He didn't trust anyone fully. Not me, not even you, boy.
But he left this with me because he knew the city would choke him before dawn." A sudden howl of engines split the night, searchlights sweeping the yard, engines rumbling closer. "They're here already," Zaman said.
Ian's heart pounded.
There was no time to argue, no place to hide that would hold for long. The yard had only one way out, an old bridge that led straight toward the river's black expanse. "We run again?" he asked, his voice tight. "No," Nadia whispered, her eyes locked on the dark water beyond the bridge.
"We don't run. We vanish."
She reached into her coat and pulled out something small, metallic, and humming, a key of some kind, etched with the same faint light as the box.
"What is that?" Ian asked. Nadia didn't answer.
She stepped onto the bridge, the wind whipping her hair, and slid the key into a panel half buried in the rusted frame. The bridge lights flickered. Somewhere deep beneath, something ancient stirred, gears grinding, chains rattling.
The ground trembled.
Behind them, the masked men spilled into the yard, their shouts cutting through the night.
The searchlights caught the bridge in their beams. Ian clutched the box tighter.
Zaman drew a rusted pipe from the ground, his last weapon. Nadia turned to them both, her face pale but fierce.
"This is our only chance," she said. "But once we cross, there's no coming back."
The bridge began to move, its ancient structure awakening, shifting like a beast long asleep. The bridge groaned as if waking from a long sleep, its old gears grinding deep below the water. The moonlight flickered across its rusted spine, and the rails beneath their feet began to separate, sliding apart to reveal a dark gap where no river should be. Cold wind rushed upward, carrying the smell of brine and something older, metal, oil, and secrets buried for decades.
Ian tightened his grip on the glowing box, his knuckles pale.
Zaman's hand hovered near his makeshift weapon, his breathing heavy but steady. Nadia kept her eyes on the key, turning it slowly until a low hum spread across the bridge. From behind them, shouts erupted as the masked men poured into the freight yard, their searchlights sweeping the overgrown tracks. One beam caught Zaman's back, making him flinch. "They're too close," he muttered, glancing over his shoulder.
"If this thing doesn't move faster, we'll be fish bones before dawn."
The leader's voice echoed across the yard, "Stop them.
Don't let the boy cross." Nadia looked at Ian, her eyes sharp with urgency. "Stay close. No matter what happens, don't let go of that box."
"What is this place?" he whispered. "A path your father never wanted them to find," she said, her voice low.
"It leads beneath the river, into the archives. If we reach them, we can show the city what they've done."
The bridge shifted again, plates sliding into place, forming a narrow ramp that descended into the black water below. A dim light glimmered far beneath, like a star buried in the depths.
Ian swallowed hard, his stomach twisting.
It didn't look like safety, it looked like a mouth waiting to close.
"They're coming!"
Zaman barked as the first masked man raised his rifle.
Nadia grabbed Ian's arm and pulled him forward. "Go!" Bullets cracked against the old steel, sparks dancing around their feet as they sprinted down the sloping bridge. The hum grew louder, almost alive, as if the bridge itself recognized them. A hatch at the end began to open, spilling faint golden light into the night. Then a shot rang out, not from behind, but ahead.
Nadia stumbled, her hand flying to her shoulder. Blood seeped through her coat. The key clattered against the steel, spinning to Ian's feet. He froze. From the shadows of the hatch, another figure stepped forward, unmasked, familiar. His hair was streaked with gray, his eyes cold and tired.
"Father?" Ian breathed. The man didn't smile. His gaze fell on the box, not the boy. "Give it to me, Ian. Quickly." Zaman stopped dead in his tracks.
"This is a trick." "No," Ian whispered, his voice breaking.
"That's him. That's him."
But something in the man's eyes was wrong, too distant, too calm. There was no warmth, no relief in seeing his son alive.
Only hunger. Only purpose.
Behind them, the masked men were almost at the bridge's start. Ahead, the man who called himself Ian's father waited with open hands.
Nadia's breath came ragged.
"Don't trust him," she rasped.
"Not here."
The bridge shuddered as the water below began to swirl, the hatch's golden light now flickering like a heartbeat.
Ian's mind spun.
All this time, he had carried the box for his father. He had risked his life, betrayed friends, and crossed a city at war, yet now, at the threshold, he wasn't sure if the man waiting for it was the same man who once whispered him to sleep. The bridge trembled like a living thing, the old gears beneath the water grinding louder with every second. Ian's heart pounded against his chest, the cold air cutting into his lungs as the glow of the box painted his face pale gold. Behind him, the masked men were closing in, their shouts growing sharper, their boots thundering against the steel. Ahead, the hatch gleamed faintly, and the man who looked like his father stood waiting, his hand outstretched. The moonlight caught the scar along his temple, the same place his father once bore a wound when they worked together in the old yard. "Ian," the man said calmly, though his voice was like a blade dragged across stone.
"You've done well. Now give me the box. The city can still be saved."
Zaman shifted beside him, his knuckles white around the rusted pipe.
Don't. His eyes, they're not the eyes of a man who came to save anyone.
Nadia groaned, clutching her shoulder as blood seeped between her fingers.
Listen to him, boy, that's not the man your father was.
Ayan's throat felt dry as dust. He remembered his father's hands, grease-stained, strong, warm when they lifted him onto the rooftop to see the first snowfall. He remembered the promises, one day, you'll know why we fight to keep the city breathing. But he also remembered the nights his father disappeared, the whispers of names Ayan never met, the cold stares that followed him in the market.
Why didn't you come for me? Ayan asked, his voice trembling. Why did you let me run through the dark while they hunted me like a rat? The man's expression flickered, just for a moment. Because you were the only one who could move unseen.
You carried the truth where I could not.
That's not an answer, Zaman snapped.
The masked leader reached the bridge, his rifle raised.
Enough. Hand it over or the boy dies. Time folded in on itself. The roar of the river below, the glare of the searchlights, Nadia's rasping breath, everything became distant. Ayan looked down at the box in his hands.
Its glow was steady now, almost pulsing, like a heartbeat waiting to be released.
What's inside? He asked.
His father's double, or perhaps his father, hesitated.
Everything they've hidden from you.
The names they buried, the children they starved, the truth they feared. Or the key to finish what they started, Nadia whispered. The man's gaze hardened.
You don't understand the cost of mercy, girl. Zaman stepped closer to Ayan, his voice low but fierce. You choose now. Not him. Not them.
The masked men fired a warning shot, the bullet shrieking past their heads. The bridge groaned again, the hatch yawning wider, the golden light flaring like dawn beneath the black river.
Ayan took a step forward. Then another.
The man reached out, his fingers inches away. And Ayan threw the box, past him, into the golden light below. The man shouted, his mask of calm breaking as he lunged too late. The box hit the light and cracked open with a sound like 1,000 voices breathing at once. The glow burst upward, flooding the bridge, spilling over the river, racing along the rails like liquid fire. The masked men cried out, their rifles clattering as the light burned their eyes. Zaman grabbed Ayan and pulled him back, shielding him. Nadia fell to her knees, her hand outstretched as if to catch the last echo of its warmth.
Then the light was gone.
The river stilled.
The hatch sealed itself with a thunderous clang.
The bridge stopped, trembling.
Silence.
The man who claimed to be Ayan's father stood frozen, his hand empty, his face pale. Slowly, he turned his gaze to the boy, not with anger now, but with something far older.
Regret.
You've doomed them, he whispered. No, Ayan said, his voice steady for the first time.
I gave them a chance to see. Far in the city, the bells stopped tolling.
In their place came another sound, voices, thousands of them, rising as lights flickered across the skyline, windows thrown open as hidden broadcasts began to play. Images, names, truths long buried spilled into the streets like the dawn breaking through a storm. The masked men retreated, their formation broken. The man who had called himself father stepped back, his shadow stretching long and thin across the steel.
This isn't over, he said. You've started something you cannot finish.
He turned and vanished into the night. Zaman exhaled slowly, leaning on his pipe like an old man. You did it, boy. Nadia smiled faintly despite her pain.
No, he did it. The city was waking.
Not saved, not yet, but no longer blind. Ayan stood at the center of the bridge, the cold wind tugging at his clothes, the river whispering below. He felt no triumph, only the weight of what came next. His father might still be alive, but he was no longer the man Ayan remembered. The truth was free now, but truth alone did not build a better city. It had to be carried, fought for, rebuilt piece by piece, name by name.
Zaman placed a hand on his shoulder. Where now?
Ayan looked at the skyline, where fires of protest already flickered like stars being reborn.
Home, he said softly. We start from home.
And as the first pale light of morning touched the bridge, the boy who once begged for scraps walked toward the city, not as a beggar, not as a fugitive, but as someone who had made a choice, and would live with its weight.